The 2025 Framework 16 refresh released a new mainboard, an NVIDIA 5070 GPU, and a more rigid top cover. I've had two Framework 16 laptops for over a year. One is my primary work machine, and the other is my personal machine. Let's discuss my likes, dislikes, and what to consider when looking at the Framework 16. If you're just here for the conclusion, here it is. Who should consider the Framework 16? The Framework 16 is great for developers who want a repairable, customizable laptop with good enough build quality and a strong community. Developers that spend time using the laptop docked with perhaps minimal travel. Developers that also want to run Linux and don't mind tinkering with the system and the hardware. If you frequently travel or are otherwise in need of excellent battery life, then the Framework 16 might not be for you. The Framework 16 is bulkier and heavier than comparable laptops and doesn't always fit in a book bag or messenger bag. You'll also want to carry your charger with you, even when running on power saving mode, especially if you're doing more than just web browsing. The good news is the 2025 Framework 16 refresh introduced the AMD Ryzen AI 300 series CPUs that have a lower TDP than previous Ryzen 7000 series CPUs. That should help with the battery life, but doesn't do anything about the bulk and weight. So if you're concerned about that, you might want to consider the Framework 13 instead. I've been using the Framework 16 as my primary work machine for over a year, and it works well when working from home and when traveling. To give you a sense of my travel, I've been traveling for work about once every 1 to 2 months. I'll admit, I had a brief stint where I wished I had a MacBook for the battery life, but I adjusted the power saving settings on the framework and haven't thought about a MacBook since then. Ultimately, you'll need to think about your use cases before deciding to go with Framework 16. Let's discuss what I like and dislike about the Framework 16. I'll go one for one to keep it interesting. The screen quality is fantastic, and I love the matte finish to minimize glare. I find the 2560 by 1600 resolution at 188 ppi to be perfect for sharp text. It's not a retina, but I do enjoy using it at 1.5 scaling, which is the sweet spot for me. The screen is also 165 Hz, which is wonderful for moving text and probably gaming, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't really game anymore. The screen isn't perfect, however. There's noticeable screen bleed when viewing a dark image in a dark room. I don't notice this generally during usage, but I do notice it when I boot my machine in a dark room. My biggest dislike with a screen is the wobble. Now, this isn't the panel itself, but the top cover that holds the panel. It has noticeable wobble and can flex when items are placed on top of the laptop. This flex causes marks from the keyboard to appear on the screen, and it can even wake the laptop when it's locked, which can drain the battery and hurt your battery life even more. Luckily, Framework is addressing both of these issues in their 2025 Framework 16 refresh with a more rigid top cover and a keyboard firmware update. The keyboard is extremely pleasant to type on. The quality is great, and the keys have good travel to keep typing comfortable and responsive. I like that Framework offers a selection of keyboards with various layouts. I ended up choosing the ANSI layout with blank keys, which is perfect for me. I particularly like that the keyboard is powered by QMK firmware, which is what I use to remap my caps lock key to control as God intended. Below the keyboard is Framework's Touchpad module. Compared to the keyboard, the touchpad is kind of mediocre. It's not as smooth or responsive as a MacBook, but what really is? It works well enough for general use though. My main issues with the touchpad module are its size and the two spacers on either side of it that continuously pull my arm hairs. I can't type without one arm hair being pulled. Please, Framework, release a larger touchpad module without these spacers. Other than that, there are times where my palm hits the touchpad module when I'm typing and it registers a click that moves my cursor. That's a little jarring, but I believe Framework is working on this issue as well. Customization is one of the primary reasons I bought a Framework 16. I enjoy being able to customize my keyboard, bezel, and ports with different layouts, colors, and functionality. There are different expansion bay modules that support extra NVMe drives or even a GPU. Whatever your use case, there's a customization that is perfect for you. I've never felt that way before about any other laptop. This customization does come at a cost though, both in size and in price. Framework had to create space for all of these customizable components, which means the Framework 16 is larger than other comparable 16-inch laptops. The left to right dimension, whatever you call that, length or width, it's the same size as the MacBook 16 or the MacBook Pro 16. It's just the front to back dimension that's larger. and regrettably so, as it limits what book bags the Framework 16 can fit in, especially with the GPU module installed, which extends it even further. For reference, I can fit a MacBook Pro 16-inch in my motorcycle book bag and tightly fit a Framework 16 with the standard expansion bay, but I can't fit the Framework 16 with the GPU module at all. The Framework 16 is one of the most repairable and upgradable laptops available. Not only do I feel that I own the Framework 16, but I also feel unafraid to use it. If I wear out the keys on my keyboard or bust my screen, there are a plethora of parts available that I can self service repair. I don't have to baby this laptop because I know it won't require an expensive trip to the store if I were to break something. The Framework 16 also doesn't become useless over time. I can upgrade the Framework 16 as new parts become available, which has already happened with the 2025 Framework 16 refresh, where Framework released their new mainboard. I personally haven't upgraded to the new mainboard because the price is just a bit too high that I might as well get an entire new machine for the money. But the option is there should you be in need of an upgrade. In my opinion, Framework should introduce a trade in program where I can trade in my old mainboard for a significant discount off the new mainboard. Please, Framework, make that a reality and I will buy your mainboard tomorrow. It's not all roses though, as being repairable and upgradable means that the parts must be replaceable, and being replaceable means that there are limits to what parts can be used. Framework does a pretty good job of offering quality parts where they can, but certain parts are significantly worse than what I've experienced on other laptops. Specifically, I'm not a fan of the webcam, the microphone, or the speakers. If I'm traveling with the Framework 16 and I know that I'm going to be on an important meeting, either speaking or presenting, well, I'm going to pack a separate webcam, I'm going to pack a separate microphone, and I'm just going to use my wireless headphones for output. I just don't like or trust the quality of the webcam, microphone, and speakers on the Framework, which is a shame because I shouldn't need to travel with external equipment just to have a quality meeting experience. This is another area that had me yearning for a MacBook for a while until I ultimately accepted it as a unfortunate reality of the Framework. And this is not to say that Framework doesn't have quality components here, it's just that I'm used to a better audio setup and I just wanted a little bit more, especially when I use a MacBook. I do find the price of the Framework to be acceptable and competitive for what it is. I paid about $2,300 for my work laptop, $1,800 for the laptop, and $500 for memory and an NVMe drive. I couldn't even get the base MacBook Pro 16-inch for that price. And if I did spend the extra $200 for the MacBook Pro, I'd have much less RAM and storage, but I would have a better CPU. So you gotta balance that. Being able to bring your own memory and storage can significantly save you money on the Framework, especially if you have compatible components on hand that you're gonna use. One of my dislikes on the price topic is there's no extended warranty or accidental damage protection for the Framework like AppleCare has for its MacBooks. That means once you're outside of your 1 year warranty, things could potentially get really expensive to replace. Now, I did have a port die on my initial mainboard on my Framework, and Framework replaced it under warranty, but I'm not sure what would have happened if I was outside the warranty period. Perhaps it would have been much more expensive. I also dislike the fan noise and the heat created when doing something intense like compiling a program or rendering a video. It's not that I don't expect there to be fan noise and heat, but I just expected the machine to run a bit more efficiently than it does. One of my podcast co hosts noticed the fan noise during recording, which was kind of embarrassing and not something that I expected. I did end up swapping to the Honeywell PTM 7958 thermal pad after Framework sent it to me for free, and the thermals have been better since then. So perhaps this fan noise and heat dislike is less of an issue than I actually remember it. Linux support is amazing on the Framework 16. There are a few officially supported Linux distributions, such as Fedora, Ubuntu, and Bazite. There are also a number of community-supported Linux distributions, including my distribution of choice, Arch Linux, and NixOS. It's extremely gratifying to have a company that officially supports running Linux on their hardware, and it kind of reminds me of what Dell was trying to do with the XPS Developer Edition and Ubuntu, but Framework actually executed this pretty well. If you're curious, I have run Windows on the Framework 16 as well, and it works. I'm just a Linux person at heart, so I stay away from Windows when I can. The issue with running Linux on any hardware, even the Framework 16, is compatibility with peripherals and software availability. This is less of a dislike and more of an informational note, but it does affect how I use the Framework 16. Now, I did extensive research before purchasing peripherals, and I made sure that the software that I had to run and that I wanted to run ran well on Linux before committing to the Framework 16. Even so, with all of that preparation, there are still quirks that I have to deal with every now and then, and I'm sure you're going to too if you run Linux on a Framework 16. One of the quirks that I struggle with the most is getting good battery life when traveling. Now, initially, I ran balanced mode, 165 hertz refresh rate, and I used whatever expansion cards I wanted, and my battery life was abysmal. I mean, really, really bad. After some research, I started using power saver mode, dropped my refresh rate to 60 hertz, and I made sure the expansion cards were plugged into the correct slots as per Framework's guidance. My battery life improved to an acceptable level where I no longer felt that I needed to be tethered to my charger at all times. Now, this isn't a knock on the Framework 16, but I never had to think about battery life when using a MacBook. So be sure to remember this if you're considering a Framework 16. I already gave you the upfront conclusion earlier, so seek back in the video if you missed it. The Framework 16 is a wonderful machine that very much feels like a version 1 system in both a good way and a bad way. Now, I've been using and enjoying my Framework 16 for the past year and will continue to use it as my travel work machine as I transition to a Framework desktop for my primary work machine. This is not to say I don't like the laptop, I just like using a desktop when I'm at a desk. All in all, I do like what I'm seeing from Framework the company, and I hope you now have information you need if you're considering the Framework 16 for yourself. The new refresh is really nice, and I'd probably recommend that if I were going to start anew. Thank you all for watching. See you in the next one.